The stagecoach rattled to a stop, kicking up dust that swirled like golden ghosts in the late afternoon sun. Eleanor Harris clutched her worn leather satchel to her chest, knuckles white with apprehension. Denver, Colorado Territory, 1871. The destination that had consumed her thoughts during the grueling 2-week journey from Philadelphia. Now that she had arrived, fear threatened to steal her resolve. "Last stop, Denver," called the driver, his voice gruff from years of shouting over the clatter of hooves and wheels. Eleanor stepped down carefully, her modest blue traveling dress already coated with a fine layer of dust. The small mining town sprawled before her, a chaotic assortment of wooden buildings, saloons, and shops nestled against the dramatic backdrop of the Rocky Mountains. Men in dusty attire moved purposefully along the boardwalks, sparing curious glances for the new arrival. She had come west as a mail-order bride, answering an advertisement placed by a man named Garrett Thompson. The exchange of letters had been brief but promising. He had described himself as a cattle rancher, with a modest spread outside of town, seeking a practical woman of good character. Eleanor had offered honesty, hard work, and companionship. Neither had mentioned love, but she had hoped that perhaps it might grow with time. What Eleanor hadn't revealed in those carefully penned letters was her desperation. After losing her parents to influenza and facing financial ruin, becoming a mail-order bride seemed her only escape from either destitution or an unwanted marriage to her father's elderly business associate. "Miss Harris?" A tall man approached, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair streaked with premature gray. His face was weathered, tanned from years under the harsh western sun, but his eyes were kind. "Yes, I'm Eleanor Harris," she replied, extending her hand with as much dignity as she could muster. "Garrett Thompson." He shook her hand firmly. "Welcome to Denver." His gaze was appraising but not unkind. "I've got the wagon just over there. We've got about an hour's ride to the ranch." As they walked toward the wagon, Eleanor felt the stares of several men lounging outside the saloon. One whistled low, and another made a crude comment that made her cheeks flame. Garrett's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, simply helping her up onto the wagon seat before climbing up beside her. The journey to the Thompson ranch passed in awkward conversation. Eleanor learned that Garrett had come west after the war between the states, like many men seeking a fresh start. He'd built his ranch from nothing, now running about 200 head of cattle with the help of a few hired hands. "It ain't much compared to some spreads," he admitted, "but it's mine, free and clear." When they crested a small rise, Eleanor saw the ranch spread out below them, a modest but well-maintained house, a barn, corral, and several outbuildings. Beyond stretched grassland dotted with cattle. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. Though small, the ranch had a settled, cared-for appearance that suggested stability, something she had sorely lacked these past months. Garrett's expression softened slightly. "Been working on fixing up the house these past months. Added a proper bedroom for you." As they approached the ranch, 3 men emerged from the barn. They stared openly as Garrett helped Eleanor down from the wagon. "Boys, this is Miss Harris," Garrett said, a note of warning in his voice. "She's come a long way, so mind your manners." The men nodded respectfully, though Eleanor caught the skeptical glances they exchanged. She lifted her chin. She would prove her worth, regardless of their doubts. Inside, the house was simple but clean. A main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace along one wall. A narrow hallway led to what appeared to be 2 bedrooms. "This one's yours," Garrett said, opening a door to reveal a small but tidy room. "Got new curtains and linens. The chest of drawers belonged to my mother." "Thank you," Eleanor said, touched by his consideration. "It's perfect." That evening, as they sat across from each other at the table, the reality of her situation truly struck Eleanor. She had traveled nearly 2,000 miles to marry a man she'd never met, leaving behind everything familiar. For the first time since her parents' deaths, she allowed herself to feel the enormity of her loss and the uncertainty of her future. A tear slipped down her cheek, then another. She tried to brush them away discreetly, but Garrett noticed. "Are you unwell, Miss Harris?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "I'm fine," she insisted, embarrassed by her display. "Please forgive me." But the tears wouldn't stop. Months of grief, fear, and exhaustion poured out of her in silent streams. When a knock came at the door, and one of the ranch hands entered with a question about the next day's work, Eleanor couldn't hide her distress. The ranch hand, a young man named Sam, snickered. "Don't tell me the mail-order bride's already having second thoughts. Ain't even been here a full day." Another man peered in through the open door. "What did you expect, Thompson? City girls ain't cut out for ranch life." Eleanor felt humiliation burn through her, mingling with her grief. She rose from the table, intending to flee to her room, but Garrett's voice stopped her. "That's enough," he said sharply. His tone silenced the man immediately. Then, more gently, he added, "You've got reason enough to cry, Miss Harris. Anyone would. Traveling so far to a strange place." The simple acknowledgement of her situation, the understanding in his voice, broke something open inside Eleanor. She sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. "Get out," Garrett told the men. When they'd gone, he moved to Eleanor's side, awkwardly placing a hand on her shoulder. "I ain't much good with words, Miss Harris, but I know what it's like to leave everything behind. Takes courage. More courage than these fools who've never been further than the next county have ever shown." When her tears finally subsided, Eleanor looked up at him gratefully. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her eyes. "I don't normally—" "No apologies needed," he interrupted. "We all have our moments." Later that night, lying in her new bed, Eleanor thought about the man she'd agreed to marry. He wasn't what she had expected, neither as rough as she'd feared, nor as romantic as she'd secretly hoped. But there was a steadiness to him, a quiet decency that had shown itself when he'd defended her. It wasn't love, not yet. But perhaps it was something that could grow into